You get blood panels to see what needs work, what's too high, what's too low, but I'll bet you're missing this. A massive new study demonstrates that those same markers, the ones that you already track, can now calculate your biological age and do it more accurately than PhenoAge. Hey, I'm Hitch. I'm 76 years old, but according to this new highly accurate calculator, my biological age is just 50. Longevity science is my passion. It's all I do. In this video, we're breaking down a major new study that shows that standard blood panels, the kind you're probably already running, can now be used to calculate your biological age. I'll show you how the researchers built the model, how they validated it, and how it outperformed PhenoAge, and why that actually matters for day-to-day health tracking. Now, as it turns out, this model's not publicly accessible yet, but as you'll see, I came up with a solution. Finally, we'll look at why biological age tests often give different results and what those results actually mean. So let me set this up because it's actually a pretty big study. The study used data from the UK Biobank, which is a massive longitudinal health database in the United Kingdom. The researchers, a collaboration between academic groups and a longevity-focused analytics team, analyzed blood biomarkers and long-term outcomes from over 300,000 participants. And here's the key thing about how they did this. This wasn't just about who lived and who didn't. They followed people for years and looked at how long they lived, and then compared that to their blood biomarkers to see how well those labs predicted survival over time. Okay, so they started with roughly 60 circulating blood biomarkers, the kinds of things you see on standard clinical panels. And then they used a machine learning survival model to determine which markers consistently contribute independent predictive value, which ones actually mattered. That process narrowed it down to 25 biomarkers that consistently predicted risk, plus age and sex. Things like glucose, CRP, creatinine, inflammation, liver enzymes, blood cell indices. Pretty normal labs for the most part, although a few were a bit exotic. But the primary point is this. These are blood-based clinical biomarkers, not the kind of data that epigenetic or proteomic clocks are built on. So they weren't trying to predict a specific diagnosis or a short-term outcome. They trained the model on long-term mortality risk. In other words, they looked at someone's blood biomarkers and asked this question. How does this person's risk of dying over the coming years compare to others? And then, and this is important, they translated that mortality risk into something people can actually understand, biological age, expressed in years. They asked, what age typically carries this same level of risk? That age is what comes out as your biological age. For example, if your blood biomarkers carry the same mortality risk as the average 65-year-old, your biological age comes out at around 65, even if you're younger than that on paper or older. So once they built the model, the obvious question was, does this actually work better than what we already have? And the short answer is, yeah, it does. Using those 25 blood biomarkers, the model predicted mortality risk better than a well-known blood-based biological age calculator called PhenoAge, which uses just 9 biomarkers. The improvement wasn't trivial. Its predictive accuracy was about 11% better than PhenoAge. They also validated the findings using a different survival model and saw nearly identical performance, which supports the idea that the results weren't dependent on a single modeling technique. That matters because it tells us the signal is coming from the blood biomarkers themselves, not from clever model tuning. Another key finding was that the biological age estimates coming out of this model spanned a wide range. People clustered anywhere from roughly 20 years younger to 20 years older than their chronological age. Now, that tells you two things. There's a lot of aging signal hiding in standard labs, and people of the same chronological age can carry very different levels of physiological risk. They also stress tested the model in a very practical way. In the real world, blood panels aren't uniform. not every panel includes all the biomarkers that the model uses. To account for that, the researchers intentionally simulated incomplete lab panels and then evaluated how much predictive accuracy was lost. The result was only a small drop in accuracy. In other words, even when your lab report has missing markers, the model still holds up, which is essential if this is ever going to be useful for typical longevity biohackers. Okay, so here's where the study really changes the conversation. In recent years, much of the attention around biological age has centered on omics-based tests like DNA methylation and proteomics. These are powerful tools, but they're expensive, not very actionable, and the signals they measure don't respond very quickly to short-term changes in lifestyle, and therefore not something that most people will routinely do. What this study shows is that you don't actually need that layer of testing just to get a meaningful biological age estimate. Routine blood work already contains it. By simply analyzing clinical biomarkers, you can extract a biological age signal that's directly linked to real outcomes, like mortality risk. That's a big shift. It means that biological age measurement can now move closer to routine clinical care that's built on regular blood work that people already get, and towards something that can be tracked over time, not just tested once. It also changes how we think about prevention. Chronological age tells you how long you've been alive. This kind of model tells you how your physiology is functioning right now relative to risk. And that opens the door to earlier detection of accelerated aging before disease or symptoms even show up, when there's still time to actually do something about it. So the implication here isn't that blood-based clocks are going to replace other biological age tests. It's that this approach is becoming practical, repeatable, and clinically relevant by using tools that already exist in standard medicine. That's the real takeaway from this study. All right, so after the study came out, I did a detailed post about it inside my school community, the Longevity Alliance, walking through what the researchers did and why it mattered. And once that post went up, the questions I got in the comments weren't really about the science. They were practical. Things like, can I do this? Is this available anywhere? Is there a way to actually run my own labs through it? And the honest answer is, not really. The researchers built and validated the model, but there's no practical off-the-shelf way for most people to access it or use it with their own data. Now, the authors of the study did publish how they built the model, though, and this is important. They published the model structure, the biomarker list, the coefficients, and the formulas used to calculate biological age openly on GitHub. So I decided to just build it. I built out the model on Google Sheets using the same framework described in the paper. It took me a whole weekend, but I used the same structure, the same biomarkers, the same coefficients, the same math, and the same formulas. This isn't a reinterpretation or a simplified version. It's a direct implementation of what they published, just translated into something people can actually use with real lab data. However, I went one step further. I added one more thing, because using the calculator is a real headache otherwise. I added a unit converter. Labs don't all report results in the same way or the same units. For example, glucose might be reported in milligrams per deciliter on one lab report and millimoles per liter on another. Same biomarker, the same result, just expressed in different units. So instead of making people manually convert everything, the calculator lets you enter your own values exactly as they appear on your lab report. Then select the units used in your lab report from a dropdown. And the calculator automatically converts the units that your lab uses into the units required by the model. Now, if you're interested in this calculator, I've made it available to the members of the Longevity Alliance, my free school.com community. If you'd like to join that community, there's a link in the description below. This community has lively discussions about longevity and a bunch of free online courses like the Foundations of Longevity and Longevity Interventions. That's also where you'll find coaching programs like Primer on Peptides. Once you join the community, you'll find the calculator in a post that's pinned to the top of the community page. Just follow the link on the post. Now, when you open that link, you'll have to make a copy of the calculator first and save it to your own Google Sheets in order to use it. Now, one thing I want to clear up, because this always comes up, is why different biological age tests can give you very different numbers. People will run a DNA methylation test, then run a blood-based aging test like this, and the results don't match. They don't even come close. And the instinctive reaction is, one of these must be wrong, or maybe they're both wrong. That's not what's going on. These clocks are measuring different biological information. They're asking different questions. Epigenetic methylation clocks, like True Diagnostics tests, are reading chemical tags on DNA. Those tags reflect long-term exposure and programming, stress, illness, environment, lifestyle, over decades. These epigenetic signals change slowly. They reflect long-term exposure, not a snapshot of how your body is functioning right now. So you can think of epigenetic clocks as answering the question, what has my body been through? Blood-based models like this are asking a different question. They're looking at your current physiological function, kidney filtration, inflammation, blood cell dynamics, metabolic and transport markers, and translating that into current mortality-linked risk. These signals are much more responsive. If your inflammation improves, your kidney markers improve, your metabolic markers stabilize. These models reflect that, often within weeks instead of years. So they're answering a very different question. How is my body functioning right now? That's why you can see a situation where someone's epigenetic age still reads relatively high, reflecting past damage, while their blood-based biological age reads lower, reflecting a well-managed current state. Neither is wrong. They're complementary. Epigenetic clocks are better for understanding long-term aging history. Blood-based clocks, on the other hand, are better for tracking current physiology and response to interventions. Once you understand that distinction, the numbers stop feeling confusing and start feeling useful. This study shows that routine blood work already contains real, measurable information about biological aging, and that information has been validated against long-term mortality outcomes. By linking standard clinical biomarkers to survival data, the researchers showed that you can translate everyday lab results into a biological age estimate that reflects a real-world risk pretty darn accurately. And because it's based on routine clinical labs, that makes this kind of biological age testing more accessible to more people, at least in theory. And that's why I built the calculator. It takes the exact model the researchers published and then lets you run your own lab data through the calculator to get your own biological age estimate. If you'd like to try out the calculator, click on the link right down here to join the Longevity Alliance. All right, that's it for this video. I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time.